Do you feel guilty for not working? I know that if I don't work, I'm going to stop progressing. Okay, you stop progressing. Now what? Are you a piece of shit?
He mastered sales, but then realized that the bigger game was mastering himself.
My hard work, my amount of time spent equals my success. Maybe there's a season in your 20s. You do grind and you do put in the stupid hours because at that point, you're also building habits that are going to be very, very difficult to break.
After years of closing for seven-figure companies, David Jacob walked away to build something deeper, a mindset coaching practice built around his book, Choice Psychology.
There is no perfect time. There is no perfect time where you will, when I achieve this or when I get to this stage, then I'm allowed to focus on whatever it is. We have this idea in our minds that there will be a perfect time for us to go and do whatever it is we're putting off. And there isn't. There never is.
And in today's episode, we have him back onto the podcast to explore how to delete the bad code in your mind and replace it with powerful new thought patterns.
Clean energy versus dark energy. Clean energy is the thing that keeps you going for a very long time. Dark energy is 64 cans of Red Bull and lock in for 14 hours a day. You absolutely need to have that in your locker. You should not be using it as your base point of energy expenditure because that's retarded.
The 4 pillars of a fulfilled life: health, wealth, relationships, and faith, and how to balance all 4 at 100%.
It's 100% on all of them all of the time. There is no alternative. And if any one of those is slightly lagging, you will feel some kind of, gap or block. There will be something missing in your life, and you literally just need to balance those 4 things.
And why most performers self-sabotage once they make it.
Because most people don't do 4 hours of solid work. Do 4 to 5 hours of solid, genuine work every single day. If you do that for a month, you will be shocked at how much progress there is.
So if you've ever felt stuck, overworked, or unfulfilled, no matter the income level, this episode shows you how to rewrite your own internal code. David, welcome back to episode 2 of the podcast with yourself.
Hello, mate.
Thank you so much for rejoining me.
Yeah, round 2.
Cool. Well, look, I know the first episode we kind of talked about your background in sales and kind of what you're doing there.
Yep.
As of, I want to say about 6 months ago, right? You've transitioned more to the kind of mindset side of things.
Yeah.
Is that true? And yeah, what's kind of the focus now?
Yeah, it is true. So the focus now is working with high performers to basically get themselves out of their own way. And this was born from my time as a sales coach. So I realized approximately plus minus 18 months ago, after a couple of conversations with some mentors, that there was a reason that people weren't getting amazing results consistently. So I would say I probably had between a 50 and a 60% hit rate. Some people just got it and it was really easy and it was like, didn't even have to try, and they got everything that I was putting down, and it was like, a runaway train. They just took it and ran with it, and it was great. Unfortunately, a lot of people didn't, and I couldn't figure out why, and that caused me a lot of is what I'm teaching actually good? Do I actually know what I'm talking about, or is it just dumb luck, and I'm working with people that already know what they're doing, and I'm maybe adding 1 or 2% to them, and that's kind of it. And with conversations with a few of my mentors, they individually asked me, how much mindset work are you doing with people? And my answer was none. I'm a sales coach. Why would I be doing mindset work? And they all, in their own ways, kind of laughed and were like, nah, if you want any kind of behavioral change across a large enough population, you need to do mindset work first. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. And I'd done mindset work and I'd kind of been on that journey myself. And I was like, okay, well, what if I just did the same stuff that I was doing or had done to me for people and see what happened? And lo and behold, everyone started to do way better. And the hit rate went up to 90+% of people just got it now. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So the mindset stuff does have a massive impact. That's really interesting. And mindset work for me was a conduit to get people better sales results. It was nothing more than that. It was just a necessary evil that I had to go through. And I was like, look, let's just get this over kind of over and done with. Let's get out of the way. And then we can go on to sales stuff because that's the thing that's actually going to move the needle. But over time, I realized that the mindset work that I was doing with people was actually way more impactful on their lives versus them just getting better at sales. Yeah, they got better at sales. That's not the point. Point is that the tangible impact of that work had a much bigger effect in all of the other ways that they started showing up, whether that be as partners, whether that be as business partners, whether that be as friends, whether that be as parents, whatever. all of the impact had such a broader range and had almost a fundamental shift on who they were as people. And they got better at sales. And I realized pretty quickly that I actually cared way more about them improving as people than I did about them improving as salespeople. And then I went to a retreat that my mentor hosts in March. And I was having similar conversations with other people at this retreat, but I wasn't coaching them in sales. I was just having conversations with them that mirrored the conversations that I had during the mindset part of my work. And, literally every single day, people were having these giant breakthroughs about what was going on in their lives. And it was as a result of these conversations that I was having with them. And the person who ran the retreat was doing one-on-ones. And I'd recently gotten basically nominated for a TEDx. And I know that she'd done a ton of public speaking. So she was doing these one-on-ones and I booked in and I was like, hey, you've done a shit ton of public speaking. Can I soundboard my ideas for my TEDx? And she was like, yeah, we could do that. And I was like, okay, you have a way better idea of what we're meant to be doing during this one-on-one. Okay, cool. Let's do that instead. And in the space of 30 minutes, she basically told me that I needed to figure out what the thing behind the thing was. So I was doing sales coaching, she said, because, it pays you, you're clearly good at it, great. But that's not what you're meant to be doing here, right? I've watched you on the island and I'm seeing what you're doing. And you got to be doing that. The sales thing's cool, but you have to be doing this. This is the work that you're meant to be, spending your time doing. And I was like, look, I hear you, but I'm 15,000 words into writing a sales book. I'm not really in a position to upend all of that. And I've got this TEDx that I'm meant to be doing about sales psychology. This is all well and good, but my plans do not align with this new vision that you've told me that I'm meant to have. And she was like, yeah, no, you got to be doing this. This mindset work is what you're meant to be doing. Go do that. You got to figure out the thing behind the thing and then go and do that. And I was like, fuck. All right. Shit. So I spent some time thinking about it, and literally a day or two later, I came back to her and I was like, hey, I think I figured out the thing behind the thing. She was like, all right, what is it? I said, choice psychology. She was like, okay, what is it? And I explained, and she was like, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, go do that. So that led to me writing the book that I published in July, Choice Psychology. The TEDx is about core aspects of that book. And since June, I've been full-time being a mindset coach.
Nice. Bunch of questions on this, and I'm just going to kind of go through one by one. Yeah. The first one being, when you say the thing behind the thing, is that what you purpose? Is that what you're getting at there? Is this your kind of North Star calling, purpose, whatever you want to call it?
So I think what she meant when she told me to figure out the thing behind the thing is how are you doing all of this? What is the thing that is allowing you to get so deep with people and figure out how their brains work and figure out why they think in the way that they do and figure out how to unblock, years of guilt and trauma and shame and pain and whatever in a matter of minutes? How are you doing it? Because that in and of itself is more important than the fact that it then allows them to sell better. So I think that was what she was pushing me to figure out.
So the first principle behind everything else.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, exactly that.
My next question is choice psychology. I have read the book, guys, just for reference. It is an amazing book. I would definitely recommend buying it. It's on Amazon, and you should get that today. I'll put a link in the description. What is choice psychology? What does it mean?
So choice psychology is the idea that everything in your life is a choice. You just don't realize that there are choices that you are unconsciously making. You only realize the conscious choices that you make. And what that means from a practical standpoint is that most people kind of live their lives as passengers. They don't realize that every single day they make thousands of choices. They just aren't aware of them when they come up because oftentimes they don't feel like choices. So the example that I give that normally hits home quite often is if you're a parent and your kids are running around the house, they're screaming, they're shouting, whatever, the instinctive response is, oi, shut up, I'm working, right? Or if you and your spouse are in the middle of a disagreement, to bring up stuff that pissed you off beforehand. It doesn't feel like a choice. It just feels like a natural response to stimuli. And for the vast majority of people, that is how they live their entire lives in every facet, right? From their health to their wealth to their relationships, you name it, their business, whatever it is. They make all of these unconscious choices all of the time. And the question then for me was, how do you get people out of that unconscious choice and make these choices conscious?
And what is the thought process to that then?
You're asking me to summarize a 450-page book in a pithy quote.
No, because there's parts of it that stood out to me.
Okay.
And yeah, I guess if I kind of talk to that, there was two things that, it kind of stood out. One was a lot of people are kind of sleepwalking through life, like you said. And, there's the phrase being an NPC. Slightly disrespectful, but a lot of people, let's be honest, right? That's how they live their life. And the second one that's kind of relevant to me is being reactionary. So instead of kind of proactively seeking change, I'm very reactive, sorry. And yeah, in terms of like day-to-day stuff, but also, longer term life choices. But I think it all stems from, and this is, my take, you can either kind of accept that life happens to you, or you can kind of fight, stand your ground, and kind of decide how you want to live your life. And that to me was kind of the underpinning principles of the book.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that there is a lot of there is a presiding logic, I think, especially amongst our generation, that we have to go out and, make a name for ourselves and change the world so that it fits within our own narratives, right? And that shows up in a lot of different ways, right? With, the contingent that we're in of like young entrepreneurs who have gone out and forged their own path and have shied away from the working world. But equally on the flip side of that, right? The people who look at the way that society functions and say, I don't want it to be like that. I want something different. Whether you think it's right or wrong is neither here nor there, right? I'm not here to discuss people's individual, views on all manner of politics, social norms, etc. Like that's kind of noise. My point is that we've taken it upon ourselves to become more active, where historically certain generations have been more passive, right? And it's always a cycle, right? It's the idea that strong times create weak men create hard times create strong men, etc. Right? It's that whole, never-ending loop of, at some point people become more complacent, and that complacency breeds problems, and those problems then create people who need to solve it, etc. So I think for me, this was ultimately a giant book on how to reclaim your own agency.
And by that, you mean the kind of identity or like control of your own life?
Control of your own life, right? So a friend of mine called George Mack wrote this brilliant essay, and I reference it in the book, called High Agency. And he's talked about this for years, and it's always been a concept that even, way back when we were a lot closer than we are now, 7-8 years ago, we were talking about this without the label high agency. And the way that he describes it is, if you were trapped in a third world prison, which of your friends do you call to get you out of that jam? You have one call, they've got to be able to get you out of the third world prison. Who do you call? And most often than not, you pick the person who has the highest agency. That is their ability to problem solve, to see the world in opportunities rather than constraints. It is their ability to, corral different people to ultimately achieve some end goal. And all of that contributes to high agency. I think his essay did a really good job of elucidating what it is, but less so on how to do it. And I think choice psychology is a mechanism by which you will develop agency, because you realize that actually your emotions you are in control of your emotions. Your reality is what you make of it. And then how do you actually create that reality for yourself is by, how you talk about it. Okay. So that's kind of the three elements within the book.
So just kind of digging in on that, and apologies if I kind of crudely or just butcher like the kind of technical terms here, but there's kind of a bunch of, I don't know if treatments is the right word, but things that I was doing wrong. So for example, self-talk,
Mm.
the way kind of my brain and kind of mouth are connected and kind of what my words mean about how my brain is functioning. So there's kind of that aspect of things. There's,
Yeah.
the self-identity, there's the reactionary stuff that we talked about,
Mhm.
emotions and kind of that side of things. Can you, in better English than what I've just done, talk through the kind of various aspects of, kind of how this kind of identity is going wrong in people?
Yeah. So a lot of people, even especially, I would say rather than even, especially high functioning entrepreneurs, high performers, sports people, whatever, they know that they are meant to think that their identity is not fixed. It is, able to be changed and able to be manipulated. However, they get themselves into patterns, and those patterns are the things you have to worry about, because patterns oftentimes end up becoming buried under the surface. Now, most people think in their mind that they are highly rational. They are not. Most people are highly emotional. They just don't realize that their rationality is emotionality disguised as rationality. So what you have is a lot of people who are acting in a certain way because of the beliefs that they hold or their response to emotional stimuli. And when you are highly reactive, and I say this not to, point the finger or play the blame game, but like you were when we first started working together, all of your decisions feel rational. They felt like you were doing the right thing. You thought that you were doing the sensible thing, the intelligent thing, for want of a better phrase. But when you start to look at where those decisions come from, they all come from an emotion that you feel in the moment. Those emotions have roots that have been placed there, in childhood or by other people or for some goal to be achieved. Well, the moment that you strip that all the way back and you look at the behavior, then you look at the pattern, then you look at the emotion, then you look at the root, and you're like, whoa, hang on a minute. I didn't even realize that I was doing this, let alone why I was doing it. And then the pattern then starts to make sense, right? So the example that I give a lot is, I worked with a client a while ago now, and he was really struggling with sales. And we found out that the reason that he couldn't close was because he had really bad daddy issues. And that manifested in a desire to please or impress or, otherwise show up for men who turned up on sales calls who were more senior than him. Because what he wanted was his dad's approval. And because he couldn't get that, he sought that out in other people. Well, that means that from a behavior standpoint, you end up being very deferential. You're very much, oh, what can I do? How can I help? Please let me do this. Please let me do that. You really struggle having tough conversations, whether it be about money or contract terms or starting dates or whatever it is, because again, you're looking for this person to approve of you, not to have a tough conversation where you get your way. You also become very outcome dependent, right? Because you want this person to be happy with you. So all of these things on the face of it are sales problems. In actuality, if we didn't find out that he had massive daddy issues that until solved were going to keep showing up, that sales problem then just manifests in different ways, right? It's like whack-a-mole. You knock one down, another one springs up in its place somewhere else, and then you need to go and figure out what that is and how to solve it. And you end up just being, a mess of a million different sales tactics that are all ultimately solved by a root cause problem that you need to solve.
So on that point, again, I'm probably going to butcher this phrase, but I think it's like you're blind to what you don't know, or you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
How does someone, let's maybe take that as an example, but how do you discover and fix that root cause in yourself?
It's not impossible, but it's really hard to do it yourself. It's really hard, right? You need to be very introspective, and you also need to be able to analyze your own patterns and your own behaviors. Oftentimes, it does require the help of someone else to be able to look at you and provide an objective mirror, because that is all people like me, right? Mindset coaches in general are doing. We are holding up a mirror to yourself that you aren't able to hold up. And then you get the chance to look at it from a different perspective and go, oh God, I didn't even realize I was doing that. That's so weird. Why am I doing that? I don't want to do that. And it is through that lens of someone else being able to show you what you're doing that most people end up being able to change.
Okay, so just double tapping on that, this kind of mirror point. Is this because instead of you telling me what I'm doing wrong and that's combative, maybe I don't like that, you kind of show me and I have to get there off my own accord? Is that why you take this
100%.
approach?
Yeah, definitely. Right. Like you remember, and I'm maybe going to share a little bit too much about the inner psychology of Jordan here. But when we first, you just immediately cut this far out of the podcast. I remember when we first started working together, you were definitely open to the idea of it because, you knew that something had to change. But I think you would describe yourself as, and I'm using your words here in an attempt not to pathologize you, you're a very angry person. Mm-hmm. And you can either be like, oh, well, that's just Jordan's personality, let's just teach him sales. Or you can figure out where that comes from, right? Because if you're constantly furious at the world, life, yourself, other people, how are you ever going to be able to function within a sales context, right? You're going to be constantly annoyed that you have to do this. But the moment that changes, that's where the actual, growth happens. The way that I did it with you is I kind of just held that mirror up and I was like, you seem really angry. You're like, I'm not. And then after a few more questions and after a little bit more digging, you were like, okay, yeah, actually, I can see that actually there is a point where I do get angry a lot and I don't feel like I'm in control of my emotions and I don't feel like I have a great handle on stuff when stuff doesn't go to plan. And you kind of have to let the other person weave through the inner machinations of their own mind, because if you don't, and I came to you and I was like, you're angry, you need to fix it, what immediately comes up? Anger. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So that is actually an interesting point you've raised, because I was going to ask next, kind of, how do you position this as needed? And maybe if we take my example of, like, obviously, I had a sales problem. Mm-hmm. I think I also kind of was seeking guidance in kind of other aspects. Is that a timing thing? Do you think I would have been, maybe if I'd sought you out for sales coaching 6 months before I needed the sales coaching, but maybe I wouldn't have been as receptive kind of to the other stuff. Do you think that's fair? And yeah, how do you see yourself positioning what you do as kind of needed to people, and how do you find the people that, you need to reach?
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said about timing, right? And I'm very religious, so I use kind of the Bible as, ultimately the greatest source of truth. But there's a lot of talk within the Bible about people's hearts being hardened, right? And their inability to, create a relationship with God because their hearts are hardened. And I think it's quite similar when it comes to stuff about mindset, because a lot of people are really resistant to the idea that they are the problem. Everyone else is the problem and I'm not. I'm great. I'm the voice of reason in an otherwise chaotic world. Why do they have that? Because it adds to a sense of psychological safety. That's ultimately what our brains are there for, is to provide safety so we're functional in daily life. And oftentimes what people will do is they will try all of the stuff that they know works. So I had a conversation with a prospective client actually last week, and he was like, dude, like, I'm in the gym, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm reading, I'm praying, I'm reading the Bible, I'm doing all this stuff, and like, there's nothing else. And I'm like, well, there is, but I don't think you're ready to have that conversation. He was like, what do you mean? And then we kind of dug into it and he went, oh, okay. So I think that it oftentimes will happen for one of two reasons. Either someone is, to your point, already ready, right? And they're like, I just need a solution that works for me. Or they've tried a bunch of stuff under the premise that the conventional wisdom says all of this stuff is all you need. And then they don't get it. And they still aren't, quote unquote, fixed. And they're like, well, what the hell do I do now? Or, and this is probably, kind of going backwards from the stages of awareness, like you get people who don't even realize that there is a problem with this, right? And then it is that little education piece where it's like, hey, you felt it in your bones. There's something not quite right, but your in your mind saying, it's fine, I can just push through it, or just white knuckle and it'll go away. And it doesn't go away. And you know in your heart of hearts that that's true, but you're too busy, you're too stressed, you're too focused on whatever it is to let that continue. So what do you say? Oh, no, never mind. This is a problem for another day. And you put it off. And then the problems get worse. And then eventually you progress through the stages of awareness where you're like, all right, I tried everything. Nothing's working. What do I do now?
Okay. And for you, kind of as the mentor or the coach,
yeah,
will you only work with people that are aware and kind of ready, or?
No. Some of my most successful clients have been have been the least ready to hear it. Equally, some of my most unsuccessful clients were the least ready. So it's one of those things, right? Like if you come to me and you're really ready to do the deep work and you're like, I'm all in on this, you will get amazing results. And like, I have the proof to prove it. If you come in and you're like, I think this is bollocks, and your whole goal is to prove me wrong, unsurprisingly, you will get what you want and you will prove me wrong and you will end up in the exact same spot. Now, the interesting part is the result of that goes one of two ways. Either they then go from me to another practitioner of a different, ilk or breed, and then that miraculously works. And it's like, cool, you just didn't like me. That's okay. Like, again, I'm not some kind of like spiritual guru where you have to, work with me and believe my version of, my analysis, and therefore you will be saved. Like, I'm not Jesus Christ. Like, ultimately, I do this because I want to help people. And if me helping you is opening yourself up to this work and this world, and you go and eventually get the help that you need from somewhere else, great. I did my job. That's all I want, right? Or they go completely off the other end of the spectrum and they're like, no, it's all bullshit. It's all blah, 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 blah. I don't need any of it. And then they stay in that loop for a period of time and then eventually inevitably come back to the work. It's like either you just drop off the face of the earth and you restart the cycle down the line, or you go and find a different practitioner and then that one works. It doesn't matter. Ultimately, you still end up getting the help you need.
Let's say there's an entrepreneur who feels like there's something off.
Yeah.
What kind of things in their life are kind of symbolic of that? Like,
yeah,
terribly worded question, but like when you're looking at someone that kind of comes into
what are the signs?
Yeah.
Your relationships start to degrade. You wake up every day and it's like, oh my God, another day at work. How am I going to do this? You're sitting and hearing all of the things that we've talked about. This is not directed at you, I promise. You are so focused on the next goal that you don't look at the wins that you are currently going through. You have an inner monologue that is something like, I'm not busy enough. I need to be working harder. This isn't good enough. You have done all of the stuff that you've said, right? Almost the inversion of that. You've done all of the achievements. You've gotten all the goals that you set for yourself, and you still feel like you're just empty and there's nothing there. You're constantly comparing yourself to other people. Like, you're looking at all of your competitors or your mates and you're being like, oh, they're doing more than me. They're more successful than me. I need to work harder because I need to compete with them. I think that the one that kind of like hurts my soul the most is people who use work as a coping mechanism to blot out the rest of their lives. That one's hard to hear, especially if they're like married or they've got kids or they've got like a long-term partner, or like, especially the age that a lot of people, that are in this space are at, like they tend to be elderly parents or parents that are aging and their relationship with their parents is breaking down, stuff like that. Like that gets me, because it's like, dude, you will not care about an extra million. You really won't. You'll care that you don't have a relationship with your wife. Mm-hmm. You really won't care about, your business 10xing next year if you realize that your kids fucking hate you guts. Like, you won't. Yeah. You will tell yourself all of the narratives around why actually work is more important, and then you'll realize and it'll be too late. Like, that's the big like immediate warning sign for me is relationships. Because if your relationships suck, like that's the problem. Like, or rather, you're the problem.
So you said something interesting there, and I kind of
Mm.
resonated with it. Of work is almost an addiction, and in the same way, some people may kind of use drugs or kind of alcohol.
Yep.
But a lot of people use work, right?
Yep. Work is a socially acceptable addiction. No one's gonna. Oh, not no one. The vast majority of people are not going to chastise you for working too much. The vast majority, right? Now, I realize that that's a little bit tongue-in-cheek because I think, especially in the UK and in Australia, there is very much tall poppy syndrome, where if you work too much, your mates are gonna take the piss and be like, "Oh, your man doesn't go out anymore. He's never around. We never get to see him. He's always working. He never comes down to the pub or whatever it is." And I think that comes a lot from, external jealousy versus actually them caring about your mental health. In the US, I think there is this culture of, continual improvement, continual advancement. You need to be doing more. You aren't working hard enough.
Hormozy, right?
Yeah, the hormozy kind of like, you are young once, you need to make it so that, your future generations don't have to work as hard, which I think is good, but comes with its own problems, right? I think both of them they come from a good place, but the expression of them is poor, is my honest answer.
Yep. Okay, so we kind of talked there about, what are the common kind of symptoms almost
Yep.
of people before they work with you. What is the
Yep.
transition you want to take people through, and what is the kind of end state?
Yeah. I think one of the big ones is a lot of people really struggle with the idea that they need to prove themselves, either to themselves or to other people. I think there is this idea that unless you are achieving at whatever level, right, whether it's comparably to your peers or comparably to your family or, society at large, whatever it may be, that until you have proven yourself, you can't stop working. And that is probably one of the bigger things that I have to work with clients on, is their desire to prove themselves. Once you get past that and they're no longer trying to prove themselves, work becomes play again. And at the point in which work becomes play, you enjoy it. And when you enjoy it, you start to allow yourself to feel enjoyment in other parts of your life, in hobbies or social situations or your family or your missus or your parents or whatever it is, right? As soon as you no longer have to prove yourself to anyone else and you do it because you love it, because it's play, life gets easier. Everything benefits from that.
So am I saying this correctly of like the goal is, maybe to reassess what you're doing if at that point it's still not play, but, for work to become play and for you to see kind of joy in life and the color start to come back to life?
100%. Like, and it goes back to something that we were talking about earlier, like most people living their lives on autopilot. The moment that you kind of break free from, like, I am a mindless drone who just has to work until I make X amount of money, for example, you start reconnecting with who you are. You start understanding what makes you you, right? So something that we've talked about a lot is like you figuring out, like, who is Jordan outside of work? What do you want to do? What do you like? What don't you like? What do you want your life to look like 10 years from now? God willing, marriage, kids, the whole 9 yards, right? Like, what does that look like? Because if you don't start building that now, well, you think you're just magically going to step into it 10 years down the line? No, you're not. You're going to be the same version of you are now then. And now you've got a marriage, and now you've got kids, and now you've got this responsibility and that thought and this place you need to be and whatever. You're not just going to miraculously turn into this person, right? It's not like you're going to emerge from a cocoon as a butterfly. You're not. You're still going to be a caterpillar. But now you're being forced to fly and then you die.
But on this point, so again, kind of, going back to the previous episode, how your approach is different to most salespeople. There's a lot of people in this kind of space, right, where it's just like, just manifest it, bro. Just like, it'll happen one day. Your approach here is very different, right? It's choice psychology. It's making that decision, working towards it.
Yeah, 100%. Because the way that I see it, right, and I think a lot of people have gotten so focused on the thing directly in front of them that they don't look at what happens post hoc, right? Where, yeah, cool. Let's say that, you're a business owner and you do $1 million a year. And you're like, cool, I've grown a business to $1 million a year. At no point have you celebrated that. At no point have you gone, bloody hell, I grew something from nothing. I created something out of the ground that now provides for multiple people's families, unless you're a single person business, fine. At least then it provides for your own. You've created something of value that other people actually care about and like. You've changed the course of your life, theoretically, so long as you didn't come from, a family that earning millions is standard. At no point have you accepted that as like a good thing, first thing. Second thing, all of the things that got you to that million may or may not get you to million number 2. Probably won't get you to million number 5. So you need to change in order to achieve those goals. But when you look at all of the other aspects of your life that you've inevitably had to sacrifice to achieve that goal, well, if you want some other future, why do you think you don't have to change when it comes to other aspects of your life? It's illogical, right? It just doesn't make sense because you had to change who you were to become who you are now that allowed you to get to your first million or your, repeatable millions, let's say. Well, do you think that the person you are right now is the person that also has a happy, healthy, relationship, kids, all the rest of it? Probably not. Probably because you work for 11 hours a day. Probably because you can't switch off. Probably because every time you do try and spend time with your partner, your mind's thinking about work. You don't realize what it's like to be present because you've never been present on anything but work. So when you switch off, you're still thinking about work. And then what does that do? That creates separation between you and your spouse. Well, congratulations. That person now has a substandard relationship because you're unwilling to change. That makes you a shitty person. That's the be all end all of it.
Okay. And I know, again, we talked about this on kind of the sales piece, but is this also an infinite game? And should you be constantly kind of working to improve and develop and learn as well?
100%. At every point in your life, you have a number of choices that you will make, right? Literally moment to moment, you will make hundreds of choices. Well, let's say that, okay, let's dumb this all the way down, right? Let's say you're single and you've built a successful business. Congratulations. You've now gotten to like probably, let's say level 5 of business ownership is you now have a business that runs, that makes money. That is a lot further ahead than most people who try and start businesses actually get to. Okay, cool. But you don't have a significant other and you want to get married and you want to have kids. Okay, well, you're at level fucking 0 at that. You may have had relationships in the past, but as of right now, you are back to square one. Okay, cool. Well, you now need, if you want marriage and kids, you now need to go out and find a partner. Okay, cool. Congrats. Level 1. Level 2, that relationship now needs to be functional and healthy. Level 3, that relationship now needs to be able to lead to something, which is your end goal, marriage and kids, not fun and enjoyable times, but ultimately that not as the end goal, because, well, if you're having fun in a relationship, but it's not going to lead to marriage and kids, you look at that person and go, that is not my future partner. Why are you in a relationship? Because it's not getting you towards your end goal, right? Okay, well, let's say that you do find that person, right? And you are in a relationship that is heading towards marriage. Okay, great. Well, then you have all of the associated bits with making sure that that is actually going to be a cohesive marriage where both of your needs and wants and whatever are taken care of. Okay, cool. Level 5, you actually get married. Do you just stop? Now you need to make sure you have a healthy and happy and functional marriage. Level 6. Okay, well, now you maybe want kids. Cool. You now need to be able to not only take on your responsibility of managing yourself and potentially providing for someone else if your partner doesn't work or you don't want your partner to work. You now need to be able to manage having kids, being a dad, level 7.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, now when you are a dad, and the process goes on, right? It's an infinite game.
Right, guys. So we are actually back with part 2 of this one. The eagle-eyed amongst you might spot that David has a different outfit on. There's obviously multiple different parts of life, right? A lot of people that are probably listening focused on the kind of work pillar first. Yeah. My question to you is, what are the kind of different parts of life in your eyes, and how do you keep them in balance?
So I think the obvious answer to that is the same thing that a lot of people who go into, business, the, course selling info space know, it's health, wealth, relationships, right? So I add an extra one to that, which is faith or spirituality. But those are the four, I would say, key pillars, because if you fail on any individual one of those because you don't think it's important, or you don't think that it is, important to focus on now, right? You put it off into the future. I think it leaves you slightly disjointed. And what I mean by that is, I think a lot of people, so I'll use me as the example, right? So when I was at uni, I was like a proper gym rat. Like, I used to be in the gym 6 days a week, sometimes 2 a days, chicken, broccoli, and nothing else. And I had an 8-pack, right? But that's all I care about at uni, right? I wanted to chase tail and I wanted to get huge. Like, that's the only things that I cared about, which, as like a specky Indian kid who talks about psychology and mindset now, is probably a little bit weird, but like, that's all I cared about then. And then when I got into the working world and then I ended up starting the businesses, I was like, oh, well, yeah, like, I'm not in the shape that I used to be, but it's easy to get back to it because I know how to do it, right? I've already done it once. It's not a big deal. Let me just get the businesses going first, right? And then I'll inevitably just get back into it. And then a year goes by and the business is still not where I wanted it to be. So it's like, what's another year? Who cares, right? Then it's 2 years in and I'm like, oh, hang on a minute. 2 years in, I've not really done any exercise at all. You kind of look fat, dude. Like, you've not been fat since you were 16. How did this happen, right? And then you had COVID and a bunch of the stuff and injuries and whatever. Like, but ultimately, it's a lack of prioritization. And then it was like, okay, I need to at least start to care about this. And then busy season hits in the business. And you're like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, I know how to do it, whatever. I can just get past it. Like, training's not that hard. Diet's not that hard. I know what to do. Blah, 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 blah. Excuses. Fast forward, and it's only in the last 4 or 5 months that I've taken my health seriously. And that's not because the business is now where I want it to be. I would say I have bigger goals for the business now than I did when I started. But there is no perfect time. There is no perfect time where you will, when I achieve this or when I get to this stage, then I'm allowed to focus on whatever it is, right? It's a fallacy. We have this idea in our minds that there will be a perfect time for us to go and do whatever it is we're putting off. And there isn't. There never is, right? So for me, that was fitness. Now I can draw the same corollary for faith, right? I left my Christian faith when I was 16 and I was like, I don't need this, right? I grew up in the church. I was I was in the choir. I was an altar boy. I had my Holy Communion. I did all of it, right? I've run the gamut of church. And I was like, I don't need this, right? I gain nothing from this. And again, I think most people when they're 16 just think they know everything, right? It's kind of the classic like teenager trope, but it's true. And that maintained up until last year. And it was like, oh, wait, I now make great money. I've done a bunch of drugs. I've chased women. Like, oh, there's still something missing and I don't know what that is. And then you find faith, religion, whatever, spirituality. I'm not here to proselytize and say that, you have to believe in my God, right? I don't think that is my role. But I do think that moving towards faith is helpful for everyone. Now, if you ask me what faith should I pick, I'm going to say Christianity because I am a Christian. I do genuinely believe that the only way is through Jesus Christ. However, I also believe that all roads lead to Rome, and you can enter at any point. You will eventually get back to Christianity, right? That's my personal perspective. But again, there is no perfect time to do it. The perfect time was way, way, way yesterday. But most people just put it off, right? So in my mind, you have to have balance across those 4 facets: health, wealth, relationships, and your faith. And if any one of those is slightly lagging, you will feel some kind of, gap or block or whatever, phraseology you want to use. There will be something missing in your life, and you literally just need to balance those 4 things.
Okay. I want to come back to faith in a minute, but just to kind of touch on the 4 pillars and kind of stay there for a sec. Are you saying that those 4 plates should be spinning all the time? And the kind of follow up to that, if so, is, how?
Yeah. I'm going to address how first, because I think that's actually the easier answer, despite it sounding like the more complex one. How? Because they have to. That's the reality of it, right? Like, put it this way. If you had a wife, a child, and a dog, and yourself in a house, right? What you're asking is, well, which one is most important? And there will be various different people who will disagree on the order of wife and child. But dog probably comes third, realistically, right? As awful as it sounds, dog probably comes third. Well, cool, but does that mean that you never feed the dog? No, you still have to feed the dog, otherwise the dog dies. Well, let's say that you were entirely self-sacrificial, and you said the dog is even above me. Okay, well then do you stop feeding yourself? Because then you die, right? So there is no world where you can just say, oh, well, I'm just going to ignore one of them because I don't need that, right? If you, for example, you're in decent shape, I know that you go to the gym, I know that you're fairly healthy, right? If you just stopped giving a shit about your health and you focus solely on relationships, on business, and on your faith, what would happen to your health?
It suffers, right?
How? Explain it. Like literally, like walk through the logic.
So obviously you kind of start off in decent shape, a couple of weeks go by.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the end of the world, right? But then over time, that kind of shape deteriorates, your motivation deteriorates to kind of get back in shape and focus on that. And then I guess also you start to suffer in some of the other areas, right? Because of the health. So maybe, the business suffers because you can't work as hard because you're not fit enough or fit as you used to be.
100%. Now do the exact same thing with relationships.
Yeah. I didn't think of that, but as I was kind of talking that through out loud, it kind of applies everywhere, right? If you have better relationships, maybe you're better at sales because your interpersonal skills are kind of better because you're socializing more. Yeah. Just on like a superficial level, right?
You're probably generally happier if you have someone that you are with, that you love and that you care for, that you can decompress with, all the rest of it, right? Your fitness probably also tangentially improves because you want to look good for that person. So there's just a million ways where this comes into it being, yes, all of them, all of the time, that's the game, right? You can very easily make this into something where it's like, oh, well, I'm going to have seasons where I focus on this or I focus on that. And it's like, okay, cool. Which one do you drop? Drop one.
So that was going to be my follow-up question. So it's not a kind of all, 4 at 25% equally all the time. Is it, sometimes you're prioritizing, for you, for example, you're launching stuff in business.
Mm-hmm.
Does that go up to, maybe 50% and the other 3 kind of drop down a bit?
No, it's 100% on all of them all of the time. There is no alternative. And this is one of the things that I work through with clients, right? So I'm obviously not going to mention names and I'm going to, blur individual circumstances because I don't think it's fair to, expose client data like that. I have a number of clients who are very successful men, very individually very successful. All of them have problems with their wives and they know that they are the problem. Every single one. Why? Rationalize it in your own mind.
I think there's a bunch of reasons, right? But essentially they've prioritized work and kind of professional goals over that relationship. Okay. Maybe there's stress as well from work that they're bringing home and kind of other things. But I think they're overall making a conscious decision to prioritize certain things.
Fantastic. So then, if that is the logic, what is the minimum effective dose, right? To use medical term, what is the minimum effective dose for a happy relationship? Because that's ultimately the question you're asking, right? What is the least amount of effort that I can put in to still be successful at this thing?
I think there's a couple of answers. One is probably, more than what they're currently doing. 2 is, I think that if you're having to quantify it in that way, what's the minimum I need to give this person or the most important person in my life? There's probably an issue there.
Agreed.
And then my third answer is, I don't have the answer for this because I'm, not married. So
all of those things are incredibly fair, right? So invert it. It's quite hard for a lot of people to put themselves in either other people's shoes or in situations that they aren't familiar with because they've never experienced it. Completely understandable. Let's say that your partner was asking this to herself about you. How much effort would you want her to put in to your relationship as a couple?
100%.
What? She can't. It's not possible.
Yeah, I think that's the issue though, isn't it? It's the selfishness of expecting someone to give more than you're willing to give, which is
Exactly,
the
right?
issue there.
Just a hypocrite. So
Yeah.
the question then becomes, which one do you sacrifice? Do you sacrifice your health? No, we've already seen how that affects everything. Okay, you don't sacrifice your health. You sacrifice your relationship? No, because that probably means that that person will leave you. Right? So can't sacrifice relationships. Okay. What about the business? Can you simply just work less?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the natural one to sacrifice, right?
And then the reason that all of these high performers are high performers is because they have an insatiable desire to succeed. And if you defang a human like that, if you take away its claws, you take away its teeth, and you domesticate it, that person is unfulfilled for the rest of their life. They are essentially a broken version of themselves. And they will be resentful and hurtful, and that, what I would call warrior energy, gets chained up and locked somewhere. It's like, no, that's not you anymore. You're now.
Or people can change though, right? Like maybe they went through a season in their, let's say their 20s where kind of work, they were that person, crushing it, etc. And then, 30s hits, family, kids, etc.
Okay.
They just become someone slightly different. I don't think, does that necessarily mean defang they can't find purpose in other things
I think that what the problem in this idea of you can just kind of turn this off is that energy has to be redirected into something, right? So yeah, you absolutely can find other passions outside of work, and I'm not saying that you can't at all, right? Some people go from being, super high flying execs or entrepreneurs or whatever, and they get really into fitness or sports or their faith, or they become the most incredible, like overzealous parent. Like, yes, all of those things are true. However, I think that work, quote unquote, right? I'm not even gonna call it a profession, some kind of extraneous purpose that requires you to be doing something that isn't, health and fitness, that isn't being a parent, that isn't, focusing on your faith. Something that requires work is fundamental to the human nature. So I do not think that I don't think that work is the smart thing to sacrifice, right? And I think the problem is the prevailing reason, or the prevailing understanding is that work is the smart thing to sacrifice. And that's where you get people who are really frustrated because they went from being super high performers to now having to just drop that thing because it doesn't work with the rest of their lives. And from my perspective, I look at that and I'm like, why can you not just do it all? Because it's possible, you just don't know how. Right?
But how does that work in practicality? So let's say you got someone that's working, 100 hours a week.
Okay.
And they're in this relationship and they don't have the time to do that. Obviously, if it's their business, they can kind of drop the hours down to 80, spend that kind of, extra period with the missus or whatever. Mm-hmm. Is that not the solution?
Okay. So the immediate one that popped into your head was time, right? Okay. Let's continue with this example. Let's say that person does work 100 hours a week. What stage is their business in within the confines of this discussion?
So, yeah, I guess the kind of thought process is like if you're senior or you're kind of out of the primary stage of the business, you shouldn't be killing yourself with the hours, right?
The question is, what makes you want to work 100 hours a week?
I think that varies on the person, right?
Absolutely 100%. Now, there are people who work 100-hour weeks who are still active participants in family life, who are still, actively participating in their faith, who are still going to the gym and keeping healthy. Those people are fucking machines. The average person is not going to be able to maintain that. So the question becomes, do you need to work 100 hours a week? What is happening in your working life that requires you to work 100 hours a week? So I had a conversation with a client recently, and she has this big project, right? Like we're talking probably 1,000 hours of work, at least on the low end, right? And she's probably already spent 1,000 hours on it. At no point in her like solution-oriented mind was simply paying someone to do that job viable. That did not enter her mind. Why? Because in her mind, she says, I have to do this thing. There is no solution other than me. So, by that logic, what are you cursed with?
You have to put in those hours. You have to do it all yourself.
Okay, great. She looks at her current time schedule. She doesn't have 1,000 hours. I know she doesn't have 1,000 hours because I'm looking at it from the outside and being like, you can barely handle what you're going on now. We've spent the last 3 months basically cutting down your hours just so you can have a semblance of an idea of what actually goes on in your life. So that you're actually present with your husband and your baby. And you're running a giant portfolio of companies. Right? And now you want to add 1,000 hours? Okay. Well, let's say you did hire someone to solve this problem. How much does it cost you? Out of pocket, burn the money. How much does it cost? 100 grand? Okay. So he's spending how much an hour? Oh, $100. $100 an hour to rid yourself of 1,000 hours. Why would you not do it? And her response was, I genuinely didn't even think of it. That thought did not cross my mind.
Yep.
Right? Because when you're a high performer, the standard MO for you, because what got you to this point is I work hard, therefore I succeed. That is the A equals B. Right? Well, when faced with a challenge or some giant thing that you need to solve or whatever it is, you apply the same logic that got you from where you were to where you are now, which is my hard work equals my success. So what are you forced to do? You're forced to work hard, right? So I go back to the example of the person working 100 hours a week. Why do you need to work 100 hours a week? Can you hire? Can you automate? Does this work actually fulfill you, or are you in it for the money? Because if the work doesn't fulfill you and you're just in it for the money, can you make money another way? Are you tied to this vehicle that forces you to work 100 hours a week? Are you tied to that amount of money? If you love the thing that you do and you just want to do it because simply for the love of the game, and you could make 25% less and your life wouldn't change, could you work part-time and get paid 80% of what you currently make and spend all the rest of the time with your family? Yes, you could. That's a choice. You may not want to accept that as a choice, but it is a choice you can make, right? So these are the ways that a lot of high performers fail to think about, because they say, well, I have to work that much, or I have to spend that much time. I don't have enough time now. It's like, okay, cool. How do you make time? Because nobody wants to address the gun to the head situation, right? So I speak to a lot of very high-performing male founders whose wives tell them all the time they are not present. They are not there. They may be physically present, but they are not present, right? Mind is always on work. They're checking their phone. They're on calls. They're whatever, right? And the question is, well, I'm doing this for the family so that in 5, 10, 20 years, we're in a better place. And the answer from every single partner is your kids will not need you then. Your kids need you now. Your kids want a dad now, right? So when you look at that and you trace that back to, like you mentioned, right? Maybe there's a season in your 20s where you do grind and you do put in the stupid hours, because at that point, you're just in a better setup for down the line. You're also building habits that are going to be very, very difficult to break. Because my hard work, my amount of time spent equals my success. So at the point in which you try and separate that after 10 years of doing it, how hard do you think that is going to be to get out of?
Well, that's what we're working through now, right? And I'm struggling with that one, because you're right. It's a super hard habit to break.
Yeah. All you know is work.
Yeah.
So here, we're going to give listeners/watchers another insight into the mind of Jordan. Do you feel guilty for not working?
Yes.
How come?
I think it's just that self-flagellation point, right? If you're not working, it's just like, I could be getting further ahead.
Further ahead compared to what?
If I didn't work.
Sure, but further ahead compared to what?
I get it, and that's just my kind of initial thought process, knee-jerk reaction and wiring. Like, I don't agree with that on a logical kind of level anymore.
And I think a lot of people started or are currently where you started, which is that kind of self-flagellation point, which is I know that if I don't work, I'm going to stop progressing. And it's like, okay, you stop progressing. Now what? Are you a piece of shit?
Business falls apart, you're worthless, and yeah, so on.
So you go back to that very first example that we gave of like, okay, let's say they work 100 hours a week. How is it possible? It is possible. You just don't want it to be possible because it's going to force you to confront some stuff that you don't want to confront. So yeah, going all the way back, how do you do it? You make it a priority. So it's all of them all the time at 100%, because which one do you sacrifice? And none of them. We've seen that. How do you do it? You make it a priority to not sacrifice on any of them. And then you figure it out. That's life, right? That's the game, ultimately.
I think the only point I'd add to that is, from my perspective, or why I was kind of asking that question initially, because of how I used to previously think, 100% meant like 100% of hours. And what, we've discussed kind of, and what you've said here, is that you can kind of reframe, time spent working. It doesn't necessarily correlate to like output in terms of, input being hours, output being dollar amount.
I'll tell you someone who I think really genuinely nails this, and there are very few like online business guru, entrepreneur-y type people who do have this kind of like genuinely really dialed. Dan Martell.
I was literally about to say that, but
Dan Martell, absolutely. I've never, like, Dan Martell's, how he talks about his wife and his relationship and his kids, that is like A+ in terms of like the entrepreneurial space. Do I think that like there are other people who have happier, healthier marriages? Yeah, sure, but it's not a competition, right? Point is, he's crushing that part, at least outwardly, right? What goes on behind closed doors, who knows? But outwardly, his family life is right? His businesses are thriving. He's what, in his probably 40s, maybe even 50s, probably 40s, right? Realistically, he's in phenomenal nick. He's in great shape. I don't know what his faith is, or if he's spiritual or otherwise, but 3 out of 4 is a hell of a lot further than most people are, right? So the question is, why is he able to do it? Because I know most of the people who are like, I can't do this, make way less fucking money than he does. And the immediate answer is, oh, but like, I'll do it when I get to his level. No, you won't. No, you won't. It's not going to happen. You're probably going to burn out before you get to that level because you don't have the other shit dialed in. That's my honest answer.
Okay. So I'm glad you brought Dan Martell up, because this kind of leads me to the next question, which is, obviously we exist in this online space of, the Tates, the Hormozis, work harder, don't have anything else in your life, just grind kind of mentality. Is that required at the beginning? And kind of linking that to Dan Martell, I know, in his 20s and I think early 30s, he was a machine who just kind of sat in his office, destroyed every other aspect of his life. Is that required to then get to the stage where someone like Dan Martell is today?
So I have 2 answers to this. I have the answer that I would give now with my experience and as a practitioner. And I have the answer based on my own experience as a business owner and someone that in my own mind did it wrong, right? So I ascribed to the same Hormozi, Tate, grind, never stop working mentality. I think that there is absolutely a time and a place for it, but it is not a long-term solution. So I explain this in a concept called clean energy versus dark energy. And I'm 99% sure I stole this from Taylor Welch. You probably stole it from someone else. There's nothing new under the sun. But I think the first time I heard it was Taylor Welch. And he talks about this idea that clean energy is the thing that keeps you going for a very long time, right? It's slow progress, but it is a continuous lift over time. Dark energy is the hoodie on, drawstrings pulled over, dark room, 64 cans of Red Bull and an Adderall, lock in for 14 hours a day, right? You absolutely need to have that in your locker. You should not be using it as your base point of energy expenditure, because that's retarded. Like, it just doesn't make sense, right? Now, when you compare that to clean energy, you are going to have a much more aggressive lift using that kind of dark energy, right? Because everyone knows when you lock in, right, and you do nothing but work. Let's be conservative. 8 hours of really, truly focused work. If you did 8 hours of work, truly, genuinely locked in, no distractions, no nothing, you didn't even get up to like eat, ate at the desk, whatever. For a week, your progress is, right? Easily. Okay, you try and do that for the second week. Now the distractions start to creep in. The fatigue starts to set in. You try and do it for a third week. Now you're not doing 8 hours of productive work. You maybe doing 4 or 5. Then you try it for the fourth week. And this is where your phone's now back on your desk. You now, instead of doing work while you're eating, you're watching YouTube, right? Or you're watching Netflix, or you're doing something, or you're doom scrolling, whatever it is, right? By the 5th week, you probably go, right? And now you've reached the point of diminishing returns. And then you'll have a lull of like 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, and then it'll pick up again, right? And you'll just be on this same cycle of up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. I did that. I used to work when I first started the business in 5 years ago, this month actually. I used to work, I was finishing off my corporate job, and I probably did about 2 hours of work in my corporate job because I'd already handed my notice in. So like, I'm not even here. Like, don't ask me for shit. I'm just not going to do it. I probably did an hour or 2 of corporate work just to like keep my boss off my back. And all of the other time I was doing business stuff. And I used to wake up at 9 a.m. because my corporate job started at 9 a.m. And I would do probably 2 hours of work during my 9 to 5, quote unquote. And from 9 a.m. until probably about 11 p.m., I would be working consistently. Now, at the start, right, you're full of energy. You got mountains of it, right? Because it's exciting, it's new, there's novelty, there's like skill acquisition, all of it, right? So you're just constantly working. Because I wanted this to work so badly, I used to do that from 9 a.m. till probably about 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. 5 days a week. I would do some work on a Sunday. Definitely not on that schedule. As time went on, I realized that if I kept doing that, I saw better results. So I kept doing it. There was a point, probably a year and a half, maybe a year and 8 months in, where I was selling for a coaching program called Client Ascension. And I used to open up my calendar from 9 a.m. until 1 a.m. Because all I needed was to scratch that itch, right? I needed more. I needed to get better. I needed more sales. I needed more money. I needed this. I needed that. Blah, 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 blah. So I would have my calendar open for 16 hours a day. People could book calls. And I used to take them. My most calls in one day, and I was like genuinely like incapable of speech afterwards, was 14. 14 calls in one day. And I was burned. I was done. And I remember the next day I had another 8 calls, and then it was Saturday, Sunday. And I did 14 calls, 8 calls, and then slept for probably cumulatively over those 2 days, maybe 21, 22 hours. Right? So like, you lost a whole fucking day because I just wanted it bad. And after that point, those 2 days, I was like, I got to turn it down. This is dumb. I don't have this in my locker, right? I did it wrong because I ascribed to this hustle culture, right? As a practitioner, if you build these habits early and you say, I'm going to focus on my health, I'm going to focus on my faith, I'm going to focus on my relationships. And if you're not with a partner, focus on your friends, focus on your family, right? Focus on meeting new people, focus on going and growing your network as a business owner, right? All of that is encapsulated within relationships, right? And then grow the business, do the work. Because most people don't do 4 hours of solid work. They do like 8 hours of work and 4 hours of it is actually useful. But if you schedule time in the morning to go to the gym or in the evening, depending on what you want to do, I don't really care when you do it, it's kind of irrelevant, and you make sure that you eat healthy, that's health tick. You don't need to go and become Sam Sulek. No one's asking for that. You're asking to make sure that you are fit and healthy and you don't eat like shit. That's it. That's health. Done. Relationships. Be a good friend. Be a good son or daughter. That's it. If you have a partner, be a good partner. That's it. Business. Do 4 to 5 hours of solid, genuine work every single day. If you do that for a month, you will be shocked at how much progress there is. And then faith. Put time into spending time with whatever version of God you believe in. Do the thing. That's it. You can fit all of that in 24 hours. And it's absolutely bullshit to say that you can't. It's nonsense. The question is, can you, within that paradigm, within that framework of focusing on all of them, can you say, hey, actually, you know what? We have this new thing launching. We have this really tight deadline that needs to get done. I know that I still need to focus on all of those 4 things. But instead of going to the gym and spending 2 hours in the gym, I'm going to go and spend an hour in the gym. I'm just going to go in, get out, get it done, because I need to tick that box. Doesn't have to be the best workout I've ever done, but I need to go and do it. Hey, partner, I'm in a really busy period with work. For the next week, I'm probably going to be a little bit more tired. I'm going to be a little bit more irritable. I'm probably not going to be able to spend as much time as I would like with you. Please give me grace. It's not going to last forever. It is 1 week. And when you say it's 1 week, it actually is 1 week. That's the difference, right? So it is a period, a short stint of lock-in, right? Your time with God, yeah, maybe it's not an hour of devotionals in the morning. I'm not saying that anyone should do that. That's between you and God, right? But it's not the amount of time that you spend. It's the quality of time that you spend. It's the same with everything. Yeah. So now that is how I am coaching. It is all still 100% all of the time. However, you have to be way more intentional with your time, right? You are still, one of the things that I teach is what I call the 5 rules for life. And one of them is all in all the time. You do not get to be not all in with your relationship or your health or your business or your faith or anything else, right? You don't. It's bullshit. Doesn't make sense. So you can absolutely be all in with the time that you have. And the obvious one is like with your relationship, right? That's the one that oftentimes gets sacrificed first. So you say, hey, I am all in with this. I need you to know that I am still here. I'm still focused on you. I'm still building something with you. However, this period of time, I am going to be really focused on work. And therefore, I need you to give me grace. The time that I do have with you, I am going to be super intentional. My phone is going to be in the opposite room. I'm going to be here with you for those moments. It's probably just going to be less time than usual for this small period. And that's how you do it.
Okay. To round off this kind of topic,
yeah,
what would you say to business owners who feel like, adding in these other pillars is just going to mean that they make less money?
If you think that you are going to make less money because you have a supportive partner, or you think you're going to make less money because you are in better physical shape, or you think that you're going to make less money because you now have a closer relationship with God, you have way more work to do than simply making money. Straight up, right? I don't think that you could ask anyone who has made it to that super successful level whether having close personal relationships helped or hindered them. I think everyone would say helped, right? Even business god Hormozy. What is the one thing that he credits his success to outside of himself and hard work?
Learning from others.
Layla. Layla.
That as well, yeah.
Right? That's the number one thing he talks about is my wife is the best. I love my wife so much. Well, okay, cool. Look at him. He's built like a fridge. He's not given up on health, right? It's nonsense. It's a very convenient lie that people tell themselves because they can't be bothered to prioritize. That's all it is, right? Oh, well, I'll make less money. Okay, cool. You want to die of a heart attack? You can die early. That's fine. Don't prioritize your health. Oh, you want to get a divorce? Cool, don't prioritize your relationship. You want to go to hell? Cool, don't prioritize God. You can absolutely not prioritize any of them under the pursuit of money. You can. It is absolutely possible. Millions of people do exactly that. There is a very real negative externality for all of them. Pick your poison. You can have unlimited money. You can be unhappy, overweight, and going to hell. Which one do you want? Like, you can have all three. You can go triple threat if you really want to.
Okay. In terms of these kind of 4 different pillars, is this a constant ongoing game of improvement?
Yeah, dude. 100%. There's levels to it, right? So, okay, the relationships are probably the one that the business owners struggle the most with, right? Because it's the one that they're just like, the other person doesn't get it. They don't understand that I'm doing this so that we will have life easier, right? That's the one that normally gets sacrificed the most. Okay, well, level 1 is you are a reasonable enough human being in and of yourself that other people want to spend their time with you, romantic or otherwise. Okay, go become that person. Okay, cool, you become that person. Level 2, you now find someone who likes you and you like them and you decide to start a relationship. Congratulations. That is an achievement. Some people never even manage that. So go you. Level 3, that person now has to like you consistently. That is a very different game. Okay, fine. They now like you consistently. Level 4, you now have to make sure that you're working towards the same goal. If that is marriage and kids, that is marriage and kids. If it's a fun time and companionship, that is a different goal. One of you can't be working towards marriage and kids and the other one likes companionship and a fun time. That doesn't fucking work, right? Because eventually your paths are going to diverge completely. Where one person says, hey, what's going on here? Are we getting married or not? And you're like, whoa, I never agreed to that. Okay, great. Your relationship is now back at level 1. Right? Okay, cool. So let's say you do find that person and you are working towards the same goal. Congratulations. Level 5. Now you have to make sure that you're actually compatible for the rest of your life, right? In my mind, marriage is forever. There's no backsies, right? You're in, you're done. You die together, that's it. So, do you want to build a life with that person forever? If the answer is yes, congratulations, level 6. Now go get married. Cool. Does the game stop there? Why not? You're married now. Congrats, you did it. Well done. Relationship finished. No?
You have to make that or continue to work on it. And then if you have kids, obviously kind of it goes to that next level, right?
There we go, right? So that's relationships. Okay, cool. Business. Level 0. Understand how to do business at a fundamental basics first principles. Okay, cool. Level 1, start a business. Level 2, make money with the business. Don't make a loss. That's level 2, right? Most people don't get past level 1, right? Level 3, don't have to do all of the work yourself. Hire, right? Level 4, make more money so that you can grow the business so that you are now no longer actually doing the thing. Most people get caught between level 3 and 4. Okay, level 5. Now that you have a business that runs without you, make a decision. Do you want to scale this so it is much, much larger? Or do you want to have a portfolio of businesses, right? So this is now overarching business strategy. Do you want to go all in on one or do you want to split focus? Level 5 or level 6, whatever it is. I'm losing count of the levels. Now it's, okay, do you want to exit? Do you want to keep it as a cash flow? Do you want to blah, 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 right? So it's overarching financial strategy. And the games continue, right? And at any point where you go outside of whatever business you started at level 1, guess what? You want to go into real estate now? You back at level fucking 0. It does not end, ever. That's just not how it works. And either you ascribe to the game and you say, okay, cool, this is the game that I'm playing. I now need to understand the rules of the game and then play it. Or you go, no, I'm not playing the game. Cool. That entire pillar now is dust. It's gone. It's finished. You don't want to play the game? That's fine. You're allowed not to play the game. When it comes to relationship, that means you are perpetually single. You have no friends. You're allowed to say, I don't want to play the game. If that's business, you can say, hey, I'm going to give it all up and become a monk. You're allowed to do that. But that also means that all of the things that come with being a monk, you have to buy into too. Right? It's not I get to dabble with some of the stuff in that pillar, but not all of it. No, because at that point you're playing the game, just playing badly, right? So yeah, there is no solution to it. It is a constantly evolving. You just go up and up and up and up and up and up and up, and you just keep improving, right? Now the difference is once you've been in the game for a while and you understand how the game is played, it's very easy, right? The longer you do something, the more adept you get at the thing. Just do it for long enough. Hence my point, start early. Don't try and put it off and try and raise this, cloud of dust that used to be one of the pillars up into cement. You'll be there for years, right? Start laying the foundations early. And that means when things are hard.
Okay. I know we talked about you at the start of this episode and the kind of other episode.
Yeah.
But can you just talk through your story of kind of development and how you learned all of this stuff?
So I was always really interested in psychology. And when I was a kid, I realized that I genuinely believe that everyone has a superpower, but they're just not real superpowers, quote unquote, right? I was mercilessly bullied when I was a kid. Now, caveat, I look back at me as a kid and I would have bullied me too. So fine, fair enough. It also made me who I am today. So I look back on that and I can either be like, I was bullied as a kid, that was so sad, that should have never happened, blah, 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 blah. Or I can be like, wow, all of those experiences led to me becoming the person that I am. I would never trade that for the world. So yes, hardship equals success. Sure, fine. But I believe that my superpower was, as a kid, becoming hyper vigilant of people's emotions, people's language, people's, individual behavior. And that has led me to where I am now, right? And that's why I would say my superpower is reading people. I can read people exceptionally well. And that sounds arrogant, but it is just a fact, right? Now, in my head, as a kid, that was just how I worked, right? Whereas I look at that through the lens of, how do you learn that skill? And for me, that was understanding psychology at a deeper level. So I then threw myself into trying to understand the human mind, the human condition, as much as I could. So psychology, philosophy, sociology, all the rest of it. I then look at that as a mechanism for, okay, if I now know all of this about the human condition and about how the human brain works and human behavior and all the rest of it, how do I apply that to me? So self-development of all forms has been really interesting to me since I was probably about 16, 17. All of that led me through my entire life of being highly, highly, highly logical, right? I wanted to know the answers to things. I wanted to research things, etc., etc. And that fared me pretty well, I would say. I then met my now mentor in 2023, so 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago now. And I spent some time with him and his wife. And his wife's a spiritual healer. They're very mindset-y. And that was a completely foreign concept to me. That is something that I would have never gone anywhere near. That is bullshit, right? All of the mindset stuff is very different from the quote-unquote arrogance in my mind. Hard science, right? It's not psychology. It's like woo-woo bullshit. No, thank you. You can keep that. I don't need that, right? I'll read my journals. I'll read the studies. I'll read, people who actually know what they're talking about, the scientists, and then I'll learn like that. Now, that's just arrogance, right? All it is being able to say, well, this one has an accreditation behind it, therefore it's real. Shut up, right? So I can now look at my own arrogance. But that was my first entry, really and truly, into a more mindset, quote unquote, i.e. non-clinical, non-psychology study, university-esque version of what became what I do now. And my mentor's wife did a spiritual healing on me, and this is very intense, but I literally had a demon exorcised out of me. And that thing was the reason, quote unquote, for my behavior probably over the previous 7 or 8 years. And the reason I can say this is true, despite at that point not being religious, not having any belief in this world whatsoever, is I came back from this experience and I walked into my parents' house, and I'd been traveling for, I think at that point, probably about 2 weeks. And my dad came over and gave me a hug, and he was like, "Oh, how was your trip?" Blah, 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 blah. And my mum is just stood there looking at me. And she goes, "You look different. There's something weird. I don't know what it is." And I was like, "Yeah, you should probably sit down. This is going to be weird." And I explained it. Floods of tears. And she said, "I genuinely thought that I lost my son. And I was certain I would never going to get him back. And when I saw you today, it was like, that's my son again." So I went from being like, this is all bollocks, to, okay, this is as real as it gets. Right? Now, that is way further out of my Overton window than I ever even conceived as possible. That then started me down the, okay, cool. If this stuff is real, what's the deal? Because I'd focused so much on the, almost quote unquote science of it, that I never once considered that there might be something else. And that took me down the world into coaching, therapy, shadow work, breath work, you name it, right? All of the stuff that is kind of quote unquote pseudoscience. And I went down all of that. And that's where all of the giant breakthroughs in my life happened, right? So I was doing shadow work. I was doing inner child healing. I was doing breath work. I was doing this, that, and the other. All of this stuff made me fundamentally change as a person for the better. And the weirdest part is I learned more about the human condition and human behavior and how the human brain works in that period of time over the last 2 and a bit years than I did the previous 10 studying clinically, right? Scientifically is probably a better word. Psychology out of textbooks and journals and whatever else. So I look at that now, and it is the culmination of me having this superpower of reading people, me then having a baseline understanding of the psychology and the sociology and the philosophy of it, and then going down the more pseudo-sciencey bit of saying, okay, practically, like, how does this track out? How are people actually doing it? Having all of that done to me, and then going, okay, cool, this is the the perfect blend of the thing that I am uniquely placed to do, the thing that I have a giant interest in, and the thing that has the most impact on the world. Cool, I'm just going to do that. That was a whistle-stop tour.
Very interesting. I know we're coming up on time, so I just had a couple of kind of quick ones to round this off. The first one being, you mentioned there, a bunch
This is going to be a long episode.
It is. So there was, breath work,
Yep,
shadow work, and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any kind of mentors or books that you can kind of point people to that might be interested in that kind of stuff?
100%. So I think recommended reading for every single man specifically, I think it's really helpful for women to read it too, is a book called Warrior, Magician, Lover, King by Rod Boothroyd. It is the most complete analysis of the male psyche that you can find. The first time I read that book, I cried, wept. It was so enlightening to me. It was this moment of going, oh my God, this explains so much. And me realizing that all of the stuff that was in here, there was a reason for it. There was a cause of it. There was an explanation for it, more so than anything else. And then that began, a long stretch of doing quote unquote the work. Another one that is probably a little bit more generally broadly applicable that I think a lot of people have probably read at this point is The Courage to be Disliked. And then I would say another one would be, I think this is probably a little bit more interesting versus mandatory reading, The Body Keeps the Score. So trauma, and how that manifests. I think the vast majority of people, including the people I work with, have dealt with what I call little t trauma versus big T trauma. Big T trauma is that'll fuck your life up. Little t trauma will mess with your life in small ways that you won't really be aware of. Big T trauma, you'll end up like a vegetable in some cases. So yeah, those would be the big three that I would say are really important for most people to read.
Okay. And then, you've touched on it here. I know how important religion and faith is to you.
Yeah.
Can you just talk to the kind of role that currently plays in your life and how you came back to the church?
Yeah, so I realized, in part through myself, in part through the Holy Spirit working in me, that I had a God-shaped hole in my heart. And I'd tried all of the stuff that, is touted by the modern world as this is what you should be striving for, right? Strive for beautiful women and like luxury shit and money and materialism and this, that, and the other. And I did all of that. I was a degenerate at university. I was sleeping around. I was doing drugs. I was drinking. I was partying. I was focused on getting myself into the best physical shape I could. I then switched that focus to money, and I just wanted to make as much money as humanly possible. And I did that. I made more money than anyone in my family has ever made. And it still didn't satisfy me. So I've done the social element. I've done the partying. I've done the drugs. I've done the whatever. I've done the relationship element, right? Again, both of these are bad things. I'm not saying this to boast. I'm saying that I tried to fill that hole with that and it didn't work. I then tried to fill it with money and it didn't work. And ultimately, the realization was I have a God-shaped hole, right? I'm trying to fill that part of my heart, my soul, with something that is not God, and it will never, ever fill it. And it was a series of events that ultimately, me lamenting to one of my friend's wives, that, the relationships I was in were never working, and it just felt like, I couldn't find the right person, and I was dating someone at the time, and I was like, it was going really well, but I just can't shake the feeling that, maybe this isn't the right person for me. And she said, I don't know why, I just need to take you to church. So we went on the Sunday, and I walked into this church, and it was like the Holy Spirit like laid a hand on my shoulder and went, okay, cool, you're back now. And then slapped me across the back of the head and was like, come on, right? Like, what are you doing? Took you long enough. And I was like, wow, okay, this is a lot. And I sit down at church, and the pastor, the first thing that comes out of his mouth is, how many single guys are there in the congregation? And obviously I've had this conversation with my buddy and his wife, and I can feel his eyes just boring into my skull. Now, I'm seeing someone. So like, in my mind, this doesn't apply to me. But I think something in him knew that something was coming that would be relevant to me. And he goes, okay, how many of you have been in relationships that haven't worked out? And all of the same amount of guys keep their hands up. And again, I can feel my mate's eyes just boring a hole in my skull. I was just like, right, here we go. He goes, how many of you have looked outside of the church for your partner? Approximately the same amount of hands stay up. At this point, I'm just like, I slapped him on the leg and I'm just like, fuck off, just leave me alone, right? I don't need this from you as well. I'm already getting it from over there. And he goes, all of your relationships will fail because you do not have God at the center of it. And you will keep making this mistake because you think in your mind that all you need is to find the right person. You do not need that. You need to submit yourselves to God first. And until you do that, every relationship that you are in will fail. And I'm sitting there like, oof, okay, all of my previous partners have been either atheists or agnostic. None of them have been practicing. I'm not practicing. But this is convicting me in this moment. It's like, oh, this is the thing that I knew probably in my heart of hearts, but just couldn't accept. And I was like, wow, okay, that's kind of rough. And then I went from there to a conference where I was on a panel, and one of the keynotes, basically TLDR, said, God is going to keep knocking on the side of your head until you're prepared to listen. And I was like, I think God's been knocking and I haven't been listening. Okay. All right. I'm kind of getting it now. I kind of get it. And then I went and had a conversation with my new accountant. And I basically said to him, look, I was like, I'm just trying to save as much as I can on taxes. And he was like, you're already doing as much as you can. Like, it doesn't really get better from here. And I was like, okay, but like, I'm losing a shit ton of money. Like, what is the solution here then? He was like, leave the UK. That's it. Leave the UK. That's your best bet. And I was like, I just started dating someone. Like, I don't know if that's really on the cards. And he was like, well, what's more important? The money or the girl? And immediately my head just went, the money, obviously. And I was like, okay, that's bad. This is, okay, I have to break up with her because that should not be my response, right? That is a deeply, deeply hurtful thing. So, no. And then I was like, okay, I came back home. First thing I did was break up with the girl. Second thing I did was go and find a church. And I've been at the same church now for a year.
Okay. And you think, this is needed
Mandatory.
for everyone?
Mandatory.
Okay.
I'm not here to ascribe a religion, right? I will, if people are curious about Christianity, I will take them to church 100 times out of 100. And I will let the people who I know are amazing at this do that for me. I can be the introduction. I can be the bridge, but it is not my job to convict you.
I guess to ask that question in a slightly different way, you said before there were kind of the 4 pillars.
Yeah.
And without any one of them, you will be incomplete. You will have a blockage, whatever. You'll be lacking in life.
Mm-hmm.
You are kind of including in that religion, faith,
spirituality, whatever you want to call it. Yes. I would say that's the bedrock. That's the bedrock for everything. And everything else is built on top of it. So if you build it on shaky foundations, it'll fall.
Okay. David, I think that is a great place to end this. So first off, I want to say thank you for coming on.
100%, man.
There's a lot of stuff that we've kind of talked through in our sessions separately.
Yep.
And I guess I'll just kind of, start there. So if people are interested in hearing more, you've obviously got a book, you've got the one-to-one stuff. How else can people kind of work with you?
Work with me. I'm slowly starting up a group coaching program that's going to be focused on 3 distinct things. So more info on that down the line. But follow me on Instagram, follow me on TikTok. That's probably the best places. I have a YouTube channel where I post about mindset stuff. So I'll give you all the links to those and they'll all be in the show notes.
David, thank you again for coming on. We've got 2 episodes now and I really appreciate all the knowledge you've shared.
Thank you, brother. Happy to help.